Sometimes forgetfulness can be costly. I was driving down the road one time, and I saw these flames like erupting out of the engine of my car, and I learned that forgetting things can be costly. Hi, I'm Mark, and this is your daily Cornerstone connection. Well, in that particular case, what happened was I had this old 1989 Oldsmobile Cutlass Sierra. It was a perfect shade of blue, loved it, and I had filled it up. I'd filled it up with oil, but in my foolishness, I had neglected to put the oil cap back on when you're done filling up oil. So pro tip, when you fill up your car with oil, you have to take the cap off, put the oil in, then put the cap back on. I didn't do that. And pretty soon, as you can guess, the oil burned the engine and these flames erupted. And that was kind of the end of that car's life. It was over for it. You know, forgiveness can absolutely be costly. And as I've been going through and looking at different kids of the Bible, I was kind of glossing over some of those Old Testament books. Like Genesis is has me, like I'm hooked. It's super interesting. Then I hit Numbers, and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm reading anymore. I don't even know. But I hit one of these great passages in the book of Deuteronomy, and it's in Deuteronomy chapter 8. And this is a famous text, and for the Jewish people, in the Old Testament times, this was a text that would have been memorized and it would have been, in fact, recited often, as it gives great words for parents of the day, a direct command even for parents of the day. But the part that struck me in Deuteronomy chapter 8 that I wanted to share with you is just this phrase. And so if you can remember this phrase, I think it'll help. But the phrase is, obedience brings remembrance. Obedience brings remembrance, because you see, the people of Israel had this really amazing experience with God where he led them out of Egypt, right? And they had this sort of mountaintop experience. And what God is saying is that if you don't obey me in these things, you're going to forget. Not specifically you, but mainly your kids. If you don't obey me, and if you don't teach your kids to obey these laws and these statutes and these commands, that they are going to forget. So if you jump into Deuteronomy chapter 8, and I'm going to take a look at verse 11. It says, "Take care lest you forget the Lord your God by not keeping his commands and his rules and his statutes, which I command you today." And then he goes on to say, "Lest when you've eaten and you're full and you've had all this good fortune and you've built all these big houses and you have this beautiful nation, if you don't keep these commands I've given you today, you're going to forget. You're going to forget the Lord your God." You know, I've taught out of this passage before, and I've kind of seen the cycle. I call it the cycle of forgiving, and maybe you've seen a similar kind of thing like this. But we have this mountaintop experience with God, right, where things are going awesome, and we're in this really great place, and then we get comfortable. Maybe we're comfortable in our job. Maybe we're comfortable with where our kids are. Maybe we're just comfortable. You know, a recent movie said comfort zones are called comfort zones because they're just so comfortable. Then what happens is there's this time of forgetting. When we remove God from the equation, we forget that it was God that brought us that good fortune to begin with. And we kind of bring ourselves down into this place of despair where we're crying out, "God help me, God save me." And oftentimes he does. And we have this great experience that builds back up to this mountaintop experience where all too often we then forget God all over again. Isn't God's grace and mercy a rich thing? I think it's so awesome. Without bounds and without limits. It's so cool. But what I want to do, and I think that what God is doing here in Deuteronomy chapter 8 is he's kind of giving us a clue as to how do you break the cycle of forgetting? How do you break out of this cycle? Because it hurts, it's painful. Like, I don't know about you, but I get to that point where things are no longer going good, and I'm like, yeah, and I've forgotten God in a lot of these areas. I used to have this quiet time, and I was spot on, and now I've stopped doing that. In fact, maybe you're listening to this, and you're like, as far as me sitting down and reading the Bible, can't tell you the last time I even did that. That's real life, and you're not alone. You're absolutely not alone in that, right? The key to breaking the cycle of forgetting is exactly what it says right here in Deuteronomy: to obey God, to obey him, to be in his word daily, to spend time with him, to be not forsaking the gathering of believers as far as is within your ability, to doing all of those types of things that we know God's kind of called us to do. And I'm sure you could list off like 50 things, right? Absolutely. I challenge you today that as you evaluate and as you look at your life, think to yourself, is there a way that I used to obey God, but I'm kind of slipping off the horse that might cause me to forget that it was God that brings me to good places? And know that it's not too late. Absolutely not. We can obey God today, and that's an awesome thing. Well, hey, thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.